Welcome to Power Talks with Santosa. Today we have with us Dr. Burdett Anderson Loomis, political scientist based in the US. Post-US election in 2008, things have been changing for America and its impact on the world cannot be sidelined. Dr. Burdett, how do you feel the winds of change in the US and how will it impact the world?
Well, I think that 2008 was a watershed election in the United States. Clearly we elected Barack Obama, the first African American. We came very close to electing the first woman in Hillary Clinton. George Bush, I think his administration in many ways was repudiated in a major victory by the Democrats. And so it sets up for substantial change. Democrats won both in the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate. So you have unified government in the United States, a popular president, and lots of problems to address. So the question is, what does Obama do? What does he choose to do? And what must he do? He clearly must address economic issues. But in many ways, he has the least amount of control over the economy. The economy in the world, in the United States, is not really determined by politicians. It's determined by a whole variety of factors. So the other thing we want to look at with Obama and the idea of change is focusing on his agenda, particularly health care, but other issues like the environment, energy, immigration, a whole raft of issues. And so far, Obama has proved to be very ambitious in his choice of an agenda, and I think we're working through how those ambitions will actually play out through the American political system.
But the moment Obama took charge of the White House, he had to face global economic crisis, which hit America pretty badly. It was similar with Bush administration when he first took his office. Within 1 year, he had to face 9/11, a serious crisis in the U.S. Is it a trend in American leadership that they have to face a severe crisis the moment they take their office?
Now, 2 in a row I wouldn't exactly call that a great trend. It does, clearly both Bush and Obama have had to do that. Bill Clinton, honestly, in 8 years in the White House, never faced a truly major crisis. And so I think it comes and goes. There's kind of a luck to it, or a bad luck. Bush, in some ways, took advantage of 9/11 to do a variety of things. He created the Department of Homeland Security, the largest department in the United States. I think that he chose, in some ways, to invade Iraq. So I think that he used 9/11 in various ways. Presidents do use crises to project their own policies. Obama, in many ways, has more crises. Not only does he have foreign policy crises, wars still in Iraq and Afghanistan, to say nothing of other foreign policy issues, but he does have, as you suggest, this economic crisis. Initially, he produced a large stimulus package, by far the largest funding of stimulus that has ever been done in the United States, $800 billion. And I don't really think he gets quite the credit for doing that he should. Now, whether it's working or not is another matter. But he came in and within 6 weeks.
Post 9/11, President George Bush was very quick at reacting towards it. And as a result, we had the war on terror in Afghanistan and later on the invasion of Iraq. As an author on politics and as a professor of political science at the University of Kansas, how do you view his immediate reaction towards 9/11?
Well, I think the immediate reaction was pretty good, and his popularity soared. He had a 90% approval rating. I think that by and large in the United States, I'll just speak for the United States, there was great support for the initial war in Afghanistan to throw the Taliban out. And I think that structurally you needed to address homeland security in some way. Whether you needed to produce a very, very large department or not is another matter. But symbolically, that looks very powerful. We're really doing something. So I think George Bush, short term, gets high marks. I do think the war of choice, and I would call it a war of choice in Iraq, turned out to be a bad choice. Clearly, we were not prepared for a long occupation of Iraq, and it's created lots of problems, lots of costs in a whole variety of ways. I think it cost the United States great prestige in the world.
After the global economic crisis was announced, there were skepticisms that the Obama administration had a calculated plan with it, and that they had a quick fix in due course of time. Post 9/11, there was a similar allegation against the Bush administration. Do you see any truth to that?
I do think that the Bush administration, as all of us were caught off guard. I mean, what do you do in a situation like this? I mean, this is an historic event. And as I said, I think in many ways the early decisions were pretty good. I really have no quarrel. And I don't think most Americans do. You may have some scholars having some problems, by and large. But I think what's more troubling is that over the long run, Bush did not bring the Congress in, did not seek a broader consensus on actions that were very, very serious, historically serious. And I think he pushed presidential power far past where it should have been. And the presidency has grown over the last century, and no question about it. But I think Bush pushed it farther. Whenever he had a choice of doing something by executive order, and often in secret, he'd take it rather than consult with the Congress, even when the Congress was in Republican hands. I think that Obama is really taking a different tack as he goes about looking at health care, the economy, other issues that, for better or worse, he's bringing the Congress in, because I think his version of change, his view of change, is to make it permanent, to legislate, to try to build consensus. Sometimes it's very hard. On health care, it may be impossible. We may see his program being put through in a partisan way. But he's working with the Congress vigorously. And to me, as a congressional scholar, I'm very much heartened by that. But I think it's also good overall long-term policy.
The next U.S. election will take place in 2012. The economists have calculated that the global economic crisis might see some recovery by 2011, and it might take even longer for the United States. To what extent will this determine the success of Obama's administration?
That's a very good question. Certainly, there are many Republicans who are looking at becoming president. It takes 4 years to run for the presidency. Certainly have any number of people who would like to run. But the strategic situation in the United States right now is the Republican Party is really quite weak. Its electoral coalition is not very strong. And so in terms of the likelihood of Obama winning a second term, I think it's pretty substantial, even if there's not great economic recovery. I think there needs to be some economic recovery, and as you suggest, most people think there will be. Whether it'll be quick or not is another question. But as time goes on, certainly the economy becomes not George Bush's problem, but Barack Obama's. Certainly Republicans will try to hold him to task for his policies. But I think on the economy, he's getting reasonably good marks.
During the election campaign, Barack Obama made several promises to America and to the world as well. Which ones of them are for real, and which ones were just for the sake of political speeches?
We'll see. I think that that comparing political rhetoric and what gets done is worth doing, because a surprising amount of promises are kept. There's some scholarship in the United States that shows if you go through a party platform and look at what happens 4 years later, that many, not all, but many of the items in the party platform have been fulfilled. That said, I think Barack Obama said he was going to stop the impact of lobbyists. I mean, it's not going to happen. And in fact, I think he's pulled back somewhat on that. Because many of the lobbyists are very talented, and it's a free speech issue. I mean, you get to lobby. It's part of the deal. Other things, I think, on health care, it's more complicated. I think many people looked at Barack Obama and saw in Obama what they wanted to see. And for an elected politician, that's very good, because it helps you build a coalition. On the other hand, if everyone has high expectations, some of those expectations are going to be disappointed. So I think you see some people on the left right now in the United States being disappointed on Obama's compromises on health care. You see people being somewhat disappointed on some compromises on the environment and energy. And yet he's moving forward with his own set of policies. So in many ways, I think many people will be disappointed to a greater or lesser extent in Obama. What political leader does fulfill his promises? By and large, I think, as I've said, that Obama is very ambitious. He has an ambitious agenda. And so if he does 70%, 60% of his agenda, I think he will satisfy most reasonable people who supported him.
We'll continue with our conversation after a short break. Do stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Power Talks. We are in conversation with Dr. Burdett Anderson Loomis, political scientist based in the U.S. Let's talk about the recent successful visit of President Bill Clinton to North Korea. How did President Bill Clinton manage to convince the North Koreans to release the two journalists?
Well, I don't think there's any question that Bill Clinton did nothing to convince the North Koreans to release the journalists. It's very clear from everything I've read that this was clearly set up in advance. The journalists were going to come home with him, and I don't think he would have gone absent that ironclad assurance. Now, obviously, something could go wrong at the very end, but I think that was clear from the beginning. So the key question is, what happened earlier on? How did the negotiations go forth? To what extent was the Obama administration involved? To what extent was Hillary Clinton involved? And I think that although you have a unofficial private citizen going, when someone is an ex-president, when someone is married to the Secretary of State, it's clear that there is a relationship to the official government. So I'm not sure everything has come out yet, but the negotiations were substantial. Hillary Clinton was involved. Al Gore was involved. John Kerry was involved. You know, two former presidential candidates, a former president, important people with long-term international ties. So I do think that this is an illustration for the Obama administration that its approach to having conversations, even in this one limited sense, can produce results. Now, we'll see if there's any connection to other serious, very, very difficult issues with North Korea.
But if a similar strategy is used in the future in a larger magnitude, will that be able to convince North Koreans for neutralizing their nuclear weapons?
You know, I think that anyone who suggests those two would be connected easily, the Clinton visit and negotiations on nuclear weapons, is probably not being very, very realistic. I'm certainly no expert on this aspect of American foreign policy, but from everything I read, the negotiations with the North Koreans will be very difficult. They've proven very difficult in the past. But I think the point with Obama is that he's willing to work at it, day after day. One of the things that I don't think the world sees about Obama is what a hard worker he is. This is not someone who has a beautiful family, can make a very good speech. But this is a guy who worked at creating one of the great campaigns in American history. He's addressing dozens of issues. And if you read about the White House right now, he's exhausting many of his aides in the White House because there's so much work to be done. So I think that Obama is willing to put in the work and to have his people put in the work. So in the context of broader relations with North Korea, probably not a great element, one thing, one time. But if the work continues, maybe in 2 years or 4 years or whatever, there will be breakthroughs, whether it's in relations between the United States and North Korea in a bilateral way or in the Six Nation talks or whatever.
During the primaries, it was expected that Hillary Clinton would be the next president of the United States. When Barack Obama came into the picture, it was visible that there was a tension between Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. And there were rumors that this would affect the strength of Democratic Party. Was that true, or was it just a fix?
Obviously, the rumors that it would cause a split were clearly overstated. Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton have very similar worldviews. They probably agree on 90 or 95% of everything, from health care to foreign policy, you name it. They're very mainstream Democrats who have worked for some time. I do think that Hillary Clinton expected to become the nominee. I think most people in the United States a year and a half beforehand would have thought that Hillary Clinton was going to be the nominee. But Barack Obama had one great opportunity that he seized, and he realized that this might be his time. And that opportunity was created by Hillary Clinton when she voted to allow George Bush to have the power to go to war in Iraq. And that alienated a substantial amount of Democrats. And that was the group that Obama started with and then built from. Early on, for example, he was not doing all that well among African Americans. Clinton was doing somewhat better. But when it became clear that he was a viable candidate, a real candidate, more and more African Americans. So absent that vote, I think Hillary Clinton would have won the nomination, number one, and number two would be president. The second thing about the Obama campaign that's really noteworthy is that he created this incredibly expensive campaign and raised $800 million, far more than anybody could have expected. In 2006, we had a conference at the University of Kansas, and two consultants said, "Oh, the winning presidential candidate in 2008 will spend $500 million." And everybody said, "Oh my goodness, that's an immense amount." Here, Obama spent $800 million, and spent it pretty effectively, to tell you the truth. More effectively, ironically, I think, than McCain, who had much less. So I think that once Hillary Clinton gave Obama an opportunity, he took advantage of that opportunity. It wasn't foreordained. He ran a very good campaign. They understood the nomination process, strangely enough, better than Clinton. So John McCain would say, well, he doesn't have enough experience. Clinton would say he doesn't have enough experience. But when push came to shove, the Obama campaign often did better than the people who had the great experience.
It was clear that either America is going to have its first woman president or its first African-American president. How do we take Obama's victory? Do we take Obama's victory as the fact that America needs more time to accept gender equality in comparison to racial discrimination, or is just the fact that Obama is just too good?
No, I think that you have some circumstances here, but I don't think it has any broad statement about gender or race. As you point out, either we were going to have the first woman president or the first African-American president. I think Obama ran a slightly better campaign, surprisingly to many people, and that he won. But Hillary Clinton ran a pretty good campaign. She raised a lot of money. She hung in there very well once Obama had an advantage. And I just think it was a question that one of the two had to lose. And I think if you look at the United States, we still have issues generally of gender and race. But I think that if anyone thinks that racial issues have been resolved more than gender issues, they're just not watching American politics, American society. I think race remains our biggest social issue in many ways. But I don't think that the election had much to do with it. What it does indicate is that the Democratic Party and the American people were ready to accept either an African American or a woman without question.
It was very surprising, or rather sweet, that President Obama appointed or nominated Hillary for the Secretary of Department of State. How do we take that? Is it also because he would get Bill Clinton back in office as an addition?
Well, I think that anyone would make the observation that having Bill Clinton on your side is a mixed blessing. There are upsides and downsides to Bill Clinton, as we've known in American politics over the last 20 or 30 years. Clearly, the upside of having someone be able to go to North Korea is very great. But more profoundly, I think that Obama's appointment of Hillary Clinton and her acceptance of the job as Secretary of State speaks volumes about both individuals. Here are two very strong politicians who opposed each other, but want to do the best for the United States that they can. So even before the election took place, Obama was pretty sure he was going to win. He was negotiating with Hillary Clinton to become Secretary of State. And I think he gave her lots of latitude. For example, she's had far more latitude in appointing staff than other cabinet secretaries have had. And I think that it meant that Obama felt strong enough that he could appoint a very strong Secretary of State. Hillary Clinton felt that she would have enough running room as Secretary of State to really make a difference. So far, from every observation I've made and others, it seems to be working very, very well. And Hillary Clinton brings with her to the job this independent political power. Part of it's Bill Clinton, but much of it is her experience in the White House as a senator, as a presidential candidate, someone who can command attention around the world.
So in 2013, do you see America finding its first woman president in Hillary Clinton?
2013? No. 2016, 17? Maybe. Hillary Clinton will be 68 years old. That's not old in politician terms in the United States. But I honestly think that right now, that kind of speculation doesn't make much sense. I think that we really need to focus on Obama and Clinton working together. And I honestly feel that Hillary Clinton right now has none of those feelings. She's not making those kinds of political assessments. I think she can see that in her life, the future will take care of itself. She's a powerful person. She can have an impact, a great impact. And maybe at some point, she would become president. And she'd certainly work very hard for it if the opportunity came. But I think that's, right now, way premature.
Lastly, as we all know, America acts like a big brother, and a couple of countries, or most of the countries around the world, feels bullied. During the President Obama's administration, will there be a change in that attitude?
I think there already has been a change in the attitude. If you look at the polling data around the world, you see that Obama is extremely popular, more popular than he is in the United States, honestly, number one. But number two, Obama has helped move respect for the United States upward around the world. Now, not as much as his popularity far transcends that of the United States. But I do think his popularity and his ability to use it through the institution of the State Department or through his own ability to make visits, produces the opportunity for lots more dialogue, lots more reassurance that, look, the United States will be powerful, but it doesn't want to be a bully. It doesn't want to use military force first and foremost. It's there, potentially to be used, realistically to be used, say in Pakistan, for example, right now. But that the first call will be to talk, and I think, and work at building relationships. So I'd give Obama time. I think that his emphasis will be on negotiation, on talk, on bridging gaps, and I think also, to an extent, more aid, but certainly more investment, so that there can be an economic relationship that is productive, as well as military or purely diplomatic. So in the end, I think it may be of great importance that Obama grew up in Indonesia, that he can see things as a young man from a different part of the world. We've elected him president. In some ways, that's the most establishment role in the world. At the same time, he's a black man who spent time in Indonesia. He's kind of the other still. He'll always be something of the other. And I think that's very useful for the United States going forward.
Well, we'd like to wish our very best wishes to President Obama's administration to fulfill most of the promises he has made to the world, so that we get a better future to live in. With this hope, I wish you good luck and goodbye. See you next week, the same time. Thank you for being with us.